Hello, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, May 24th, 2013. Well, the IRS scandal targeting conservative groups is messy, and it's going to get a whole lot messier. First up, Lois Lerner, who is one of the IRS officials in charge of the tax-exempt groups, has been put on administrative leave with pay. Is that the beginning of being thrown under the bus by the Obama administration? She also came to Congress this week, and she read a statement. She answered a question. She basically said in her statement she didn't do anything wrong, and that may be the case. But still, Republicans say, hey, wait a minute, whoa. You can't have it both ways. You can't come here and tell us you didn't do anything wrong, you didn't break any laws, you didn't lie to Congress, and then answer a question, and then say, well, I'm going to have my Fifth Amendment right, my right to not self-incriminate. Now, the Fifth Amendment, you're not supposed to assume somebody's guilty by asserting the Fifth Amendment right. You're not supposed to assume they're guilty. Okay, fine. But here's my question. Is Congress going to resubpoena her and bring her back? They're thinking about doing that. And even if they don't, listen, nobody knows anything about this scandal. Nobody. Not Lois Lerner, not the acting IRS head, not the former IRS head, not the White House, not Jay Carney, not the president. Nobody knows anything about it. Which means this is screaming for a special prosecutor. We're going to get one. The Democrats are not going to stand in the way. They're not going to throw themselves under the bus to cover the Obama administration on this one. And let me tell you, this is a real issue, and it has what we call in television mass audience appeal. Ask somebody what the IMF is, and they'll go, what? International Monetary Fund. Ask somebody what the FDIC is. You may get a few more people that know it's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, but a lot of people won't know what it is. Ask somebody what the acronym IRS means, and bing, it means fear. It means the IRS. It means the Internal Revenue Service. Yes, mass audience appeal. And both Democrats and Republicans are a little teed off about this one. And this is why we're going to get a special prosecutor on this mess. And remember, Richard Nixon won by a landslide in 72. He didn't resign until 74. The whole Watergate thing went on for a couple of years. This is going to go on. This is going to go on for many months, if not longer. And it's amazing how little the president knows. He doesn't know anything about the IRS scandal. At first he heard about it was in the news reports. I'd be firing, you're fired, Chief of Staff, you're fired, White House counsel, you're fired, Jay Carney. I would fire everybody if that was the case. You didn't tell me what? You guys are imbeciles. That's number one. The president also doesn't know anything about Benghazi. And he doesn't know anything about Eric Holder and the subpoenaing of phone records from not only AP, but over at Fox News. That's heavy-handed. That's an assault on the First Amendment. Just like the tax-exempt organizations and targeting, keeping people from organizing in the Tea Party groups and such. That's an attack on the First Amendment. That's a constitutional attack. But the IRS story of all the scandals, and they're all important. Benghazi Americans died. Going after journalists, and saying they're co-conspirators, as they did with one, James Rosen, is outrageous. But the IRS thing has mass audience appeal. Everybody knows what IRS means, and people are afraid. It tugs at their worst fears in audit, even if you're doing nothing wrong. Next up, the president does know something about the targeted, killing program by drone, death by drone. Some people call it murder by drone. He says president gave a big speech and he wants to close down Guantanamo Bay. Okay, well, he wasn't using it much because he was just killing people by drone. Why have a trial? Why arrest somebody if you could just kill somebody by drone? And so far in this program, more than 3,000 people have been killed by drone. Now, many were suspected terrorists. Okay, I'd like to know who, qualifies somebody as a suspected terrorist. But also, there were many people who were killed by collateral damage. Civilians just killed. More than 100 were children. And the president came out and said, well, I know we killed some innocent people, but what would have happened, basically, what he said, I'm paraphrasing, what would have happened if we wouldn't have done it? Well, I don't know. I don't see how this wins the hearts and minds of anyone. And especially when it comes to Americans abroad, this week the U.S. finally admitted, I've been harping on this, about, hey, they're killing Americans in a targeted drone murder program without due process. They even killed a 16-year-old boy. He wasn't collateral damage. They targeted him. And could somebody please tell me how, being careful or narrowing the scope is a substitute for due process of the Constitution, charges, trial by jury, a speedy trial, right to counsel, right to a public trial, all the things that make up due process. So how does being careful or narrowing the scope, how does that jive with the Constitution? I don't see how it does. It's completely unconstitutional. And in terms of going after terrorists, you're not winning the hearts and minds of anybody. I mean, could somebody please also tell me how Al-Qaeda in Libya, when we were funneling arms to Al-Qaeda and flying air support, 20,000 sorties for Al-Qaeda in Libya, and now we're giving arms and we want to fly air support for the Free Syrian Army, which is Al-Qaeda in Syria. Could somebody tell me what is how we can go after and drone murder people in Pakistan and in Yemen and Somalia, where we don't have any war zones at all, and we can kill Al-Qaeda there, but we're going to arm them in other places? Could somebody please tell me what is the definition of the Al-Qaeda we can arm, the good Al-Qaeda, and the Al-Qaeda we want to kill by a drone? And whether we kill some family members or kids, as the president says, well, if I wouldn't have done that, maybe worse things would have happened. Don't see how you're winning the hearts and minds of anybody over there. And I think it is repugnant, and I think it's un-American. I think it's terrible policy. Hey, listen, if we have military people in action and they're in a battle zone and they're in an area where people are planning against them, or they are organizing to attack them over a hill or down the road, or they need to surveil, or a Somalian pirate grabs somebody, we need to knock a few people off and go in and rescue people. I get that. I understand that. But to kill the political adversaries of a country in Pakistan or Yemen or wherever, no matter how repugnant or bad they are, I don't see how you're winning the hearts and minds of anybody over there in the Middle East. I think it's un-American. We're not the shining, bright, place on the hill that Reagan was talking about. We're not the shining city on the hill, I believe that's what he said, something like that. Ben Bernanke testified in front of Congress. He basically blamed Congress for the economy not doing better. I'm sure Congress is to blame for a lot of stuff, and they certainly are to blame for some of the things. But boy, that's rich, isn't it? The Federal Reserve, which Ben Bernanke is the head of, the chief, the Federal Reserve is what caused the financial meltdown because of a lax regulation, and we don't need to oversee any derivatives, and the subprime crisis is going to be contained, and the mortgage-backed securities and the derivatives that they had, that's a great idea, that's a wonderful thing, and since after the meltdown, the Federal Reserve has been buying these mortgage-backed securities that have turned toxic. QE1, QE2, and now QE to infinity. We're buying $40 billion of mortgage-backed securities a month from the banks. Now, these are supposed to be equal to a treasury, a risk-free return, equal to the treasury's risk-free return. So why did people buy them? Well, they paid a couple of percent interest rate higher, and after all, they were equal to a treasury. They were just as safe as a treasury bond. Not. That's why the Fed is buying them at a rate of $40 billion a month. And here's why both parties are corrupt, I think. And so Bernanke just talks in front of Congress. And number one, hey, can we stop $40 billion a month? I mean, we don't have to have any cuts if you're the Democrats on one side. Hey, Kay Hagan, wouldn't that be good? $40 billion a month you could spend on colleges and student, paying off some student loans and giving people health care and all that. Hey, you got Eric Cantor on the Republican side, or John Bannon. Hey, how about we stop that $40 billion? Don't have to raise taxes. We can give some more tax cuts to people. That's $500 billion a year. And nobody says anything on either side of the aisle. Here's one for you, and I've asked this question before, but ask yourself, why doesn't anybody in Congress say, hey, I just want to know one thing, Mr. Bernanke. Which banks are getting $40 billion each and every month? Which banks are getting that? He wouldn't answer it because he'd say, well, I don't want to cause a run on a bank. I don't want to tell you which banks are in trouble. Why doesn't anybody ask that? That's they fight over $85 billion, Democrats and Republicans. But $500 billion a year, nearly $500 billion a year that the Federal Reserve is doing an open-ended QE money printing to buy toxic mortgage-backed securities because the banks can't sell them. It makes them insolvent. Not a word. They don't want to know anything about $500 billion a year that the Fed is pumping out and handing over to the banks. I think that is a crime. All these scandals are including some pretty big problems, and one of them is the economy in the United States, and it is rolling over. And the other one is the Middle East. And, I was reading in one of the papers that, Al-Qaeda, the Free Syrian Army in Syria, where they've had more than 70,000 Syrians killed in the civil war. They say, well, the U.S. won't jump in until there's a wider war in the Middle East. Hey, guess what we're going to get? A wider war in the Middle East. And plenty of reports say that's already happening. We've had problems with Syria and Turkey to the north and Lebanon and attacks going on there and Hezbollah. And then down the south and the Golan Heights between Israel and Syria, they're shooting at each other. We already have pieces of the 1st Armored Division in Jordan, in northern Jordan. And, there are threats after the Israelis bombed these missiles and also a research facility in Syria. There are threats by Iran and Syria, and they have yet to be paid off. And I don't think they were idle threats. I think ultimately Iran and or Syria is going to hit back at Israel. I don't wish that. I'm just saying that this is becoming and will become a much wider war in the Middle East. And talk about something that could implode the global economy. If oil spikes to $200 a barrel, they shut down the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz. We get a wider war. We get, big problems coming out of the Middle East. Yes, this is all these scandals, the Benghazi thing, the DOJ, DOP, Department of Justice, subpoenas of reporters, and this IRS scandal, all important, but all take our eye off of a big problem in the Middle East. And finally, I just want to talk about Oklahoma, a suburb of Oklahoma City. They had the terrible, deadly tornado. It is absolutely amazing and awful. There's a before and after photo of this subdivision of Oklahoma City on the website. Look at it in Hunter's Top Stories. I mean, you have the before and you have the after, and it just looks like the hand of God just scraped the houses right off the earth. It's unbelievable. Really is. I want to thank you all for supporting USA Watchdog. If you can only donate to one place, don't donate to USA Watchdog. Donate to the victims of Oklahoma City. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com.